Hello and welcome to the Nerdosphere. We are recording this live, and I am joined today by the best palate this side of the Mississippi, Corbin.
What?
Also joined by Miss Me With All That Anime, hashtag Never Tim creator, Tim.
What's up, my brothers?
We also have two guests with us today, as you can tell. Well, if you're watching, you can tell. If you're on audio, you can't tell. We have two guests, audio listeners. Jesse is returning to us. Welcome, Jesse.
Thank you. What's up, guys? How's it going?
Pretty good. We also have newcomer to the show, but longtime friend of the show, Nick.
Hey guys, long-time listener, first-time caller. Thanks for having me.
AKA Sleazy Ace.
Oh yeah. Your first
review on iTunes.
That's right.
Ooh.
Yeah,
That's before my review even, I think.
yeah. I remember when we were pushing reviews in the month of March, I was scrolling back through to try to find one to read, and the very first one was from Mr. Sleazy Ace.
Yeah. What a quality name that was.
I think you were trying to make it not traceable to you. But little did you know, we knew.
Oh,
Now
you did.
They've just outed you, so it's all.
Yeah.
The anonymity of it all.
Yeah.
Come crack.
I thought you were supposed to be able to hide on the internet.
Yeah, man, I wrote that from the heart. I didn't want you to know it was me.
Oh, why wouldn't you want to be open and honest with me?
I never want you to know how good I think this is.
It's called humility, okay? It's
Gotta
something
keep
you
you
can
humble.
learn from.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm not going to lie. I remember when Clayton hit me up when the Nerdosphere first became a thing. It's like, man, I got this podcast. It's great. I didn't even know what a podcast was. I'm such a boomer. I was like, what the fuck is a podcast? I think he hit me up like 7 times. And I was like, oh, yeah, I'll leave you a review. And then fast forward a handful of years, and here we are, spending all this time on Nerdosphere stuff.
You're telling me in 2017,
Yes,
you didn't know what a podcast was?
that is correct.
Wow.
I guess
That
I want to
is
know what
correct.
Like, I
rock
could-
you were hiding under.
Yeah, I could understand
feel like-
you not listening to podcasts, but to not
Nope.
even know what they are.
Nope. I think the only thing I knew about podcasts was I listened to fantasy football advice on a podcast once. It's like, oh, it's like radio. Okay, for sports. For sports. It's only for sports.
Only for sports.
And here I thought the most shook I would be from Nick Knowledge this week was when he said that he did not watch the college years of Boy Meets World. I just continue to be flabbergasted by you,
That was,
sir.
that was
You
Tim.
didn't watch?
Nick,
Did
Nick,
you watch any?
Nick probably watched it.
I watched what was
Did I say Nick? Because I meant
Yes.
Tim.
Yeah.
I meant Tim. Tim's been blowing my mind this week.
Did
and
not
I thought
watch
I
one
thought
episode.
the peak of
Oh,
it
wait,
was
of
when
what?
he was like, I haven't watched the college years of Boy Meets World. I was like,
Oh.
I'll take it one step further. I've never seen Boy Meets World.
boys.
Boys Meets
You've
World.
ever seen Boys Meets World?
No,
I
I've
haven't
never.
seen that either, but I'm most shocked you haven't seen Boy Meets World.
Yeah, I've not seen a single
You were
episode of that.
homeschooled. You had all that time to watch TV. What do you mean you never saw it?
Well, I spent
That's
my
your
time
recess.
watching good cultured television, not this
Like
rubbish
what?
that you're
If you never
talking
watched
about.
Dragon Ball Z.
I mean, again,
That is
my
cult-
time
that is
watching good
cultured.
television.
What's your what were you watching then around that time? So like early mid 90s, what were you watching?
Recess,
Okay.
the
quality.
Weekenders. I watched a lot of Nickelodeon growing up.
Weekends is like early 2000s though.
Yeah.
I think that was
That's
though, yeah.
that's like in that time zone of like guilty pleasure. Like I'm watching this in front, but no one should know.
Yeah, no, Recess, a lot of time on Recess. I not gonna lie, I loved Arthur in the early. I mean, now keep in mind, going into 2000, I was 10 years old at the time, so pretty young still, but
no Boy Meets World.
So,
no.
You never had to
building-
awkwardly watch Corey and Topanga try to live together in their dorm where they had silk sheets and Corey jumped on the bed in his silk pajamas and slid right off.
That
And
girl
then
should have
he
went to
cut-
Yale,
And
man.
then he cut his finger and started bleeding all over his
Oh, shit.
pajamas. And then your mom's in the room and she's like, aren't they college age? They should not be living together or sleeping together. I'm like, Mom, leave me alone.
Let them live their life.
I know,
I'm
right?
watching Man Meets World, okay?
Man Meets World.
Man.
I'm telling you, dude. She gave up Yale to stay with him at a state school? I mean,
That's love.
Is that
And
love?
she still made him wait till marriage.
Oh,
Now, see, that is love. I'm impressed by that.
This reminds me of if you don't know, me and Corbin's grandpa is a preacher, and I grew up going to church every Sunday, listening to my grandpa preach, continued to do so until he retired. Every now and then we go back to the church here in town where he retired from, and the new preacher is a little weird. And one week, Abby went without me, took the kids, I slept in, and she came back and said that he was bad-mouthing Full House, saying how terrible a show it was. So now it's like a running joke where we're like, awesome. That's one of the most wholesome shows in history.
Maybe
it's like
maybe he just meant Bob Saget. Maybe he meant Bob Saget, because Bob Saget is terrible.
Oh yeah. But that show is so good. His whole point was like
it's a bit of a stretch.
Everybody living together. It's just wrong.
Your family.
It's not a real family unit. They're all just.
He would have hated when we lived with Papa. We all lived together.
Yeah. Excuse me, sir.
The idea of a college dorm.
I have you know that my whole family lived together.
I'm going to plug trivia again. We've been doing trivia. It's great. This week we're doing 90s trivia. It's on Kahoot, so you can play it online. It's a ton of fun. And while we're talking about Boy Meets World, I'm not going to lie, I teared up a little bit today, boys.
Why?
So this morning I got up early. I was like, you know what? I'm going to try to knock out some trivia questions before I have to work.
That made you
cry?
I'm
plugging away. And if you are watching and you go and play trivia with us on Thursday night, you get a free answer right now. One of the questions is about Mr. Feeney. And I plugged in the YouTube clip of him saying class dismissed. It's like the last scene of the regular show, and it's him giving his speech about love. And then he says class dismissed to an empty classroom. And it got me right in the heart.
You're going to make Corbin cry because he's been watching Onward too much.
You don't deserve to have Feeney tears.
I thought you were going to say you complete me because you feel that pain right now. Just remember.
You don't have that same connection with Feeney because you didn't watch the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
We can't cry about it.
We grew up, Mr. Feeney, okay? How dare you? How dare you
didn't?
type where he stood?
Yeah.
Mr. Feeney's a father figure to me.
Mr. Feeney.
Yeah.
All right,
and Onward has broke me. Since I've watched Onward, I can't stop crying at anything. Anything. I was watching, because we're going to be doing a Marvel bracket, who wins all. I've been rewatching all of them, and I was watching Civil War, and Nat and Cap are in the church, and Cap's like, I can't sign them that. And she's like, I know. And he goes, why are you here? And she responds with, I didn't. And then she hugged. And it was just one of those moments where Cap is always so strong in the movies.
You know what's the best part about that? You cut out right as you said the emotional part.
It was like an unspeakable scene that you just described right there.
You're
Or was this just a string of
You're
cursing?
trying so hard to like tear up and make this some emotional thing, and you.
It was literally every Kevin Smith video I've ever watched.
All right.
But I cried.
Do we want to get to know our guests a little bit, Corbin? Nick
I would love for the guests
needs to do some get to know you situations. So.
I would love for our audience to get to know Nick before I die of corona. It'd be great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want me to say? What kind of stuff they need to know?
Who are you?
I'm a person. I identify as a man. I'm hanging out here. I go to school
in
in
podcast.
Oh, okay.
It's not that kind of podcast.
I don't know. I'm a screenwriter. I'm in grad school right now in Los Angeles. I'm actually here in St. Louis, but I go to school in Los Angeles, and I went to high school with Corbin, and now here I am to talk about Harry Potter, one of my favorite things in the whole world. Is that
nice?
Is that enough?
Good job. You're so professional.
I don't know about that.
I knew you were serious about Harry Potter when I saw you hold up your arm and you had the tattoo.
Oh yeah, I got a Deathly Hallows tattoo. Yeah.
You have any crazy questions to ask him, Corbin? You put Jesse through the ringer when he was on for the first time.
It's hard because I know Nick. Like, remember that one time where you had 2 Qdoba burritos followed by a Jimmy John sub? You ate them all in one sitting, and I was like, man, that man can pack a lot down his throat.
I do recall. Yes. Yeah.
Hey Nick, when you go to Sonic,
Yeah.
What kind of corn dog do you get?
do you
Yeah,
get
man.
the regular hot dog or do you get the extra large hot dog?
The real question
Oh,
is,
man.
how many creamy Supremes can you eat at once?
What's a creamy supreme?
There's
that's
a
an
me and Tim
inside
high
joke.
school story for you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Clayton. You tell it better than me.
I mean,
There's not much of a story.
It's not much of a story. It's,
Oh man, that
it's one
build
that
up,
persists
Mwah.
for 20 years, but it's not much of a story.
that climax was like
it
witnessing
was just-
Jody and Tim.
It was just late at night, Friday. We're driving around with me, Tim, and I don't know, it was probably
right, I was
Meg and
watching.
Jesse. I don't know, it was around that time when we were all hanging out. And we go through the drive-thru at Taco Bell, and Tim says, yeah, I'll take a creamy supreme. And the guy goes, what? Yeah, a creamy supreme. What is that? It's a burrito with only sour cream in it.
Oh,
And that was the story. So.
I thought that's different than the time when we went to go hit on that chick at Taco Bell. Remember that?
As a group?
Just
That's a little.
that.
What year was this?
I had my convertible Mustang and I had the sub like just blaring, and I think
okay.
my
It's
mirror
really
fell
not that
off
kind of
while I
No,
was trying
we
to
weren't
hit
at
on
Taco
her.
Bell at that time. We were at the stoplight at where Manchester and 141 intersect, and it's the 141 goes over Manchester Road, and it's that stoplight. These 2 hot babes pull up right next to us, and we're just pounding the bass, and we both look over. And they look over, and then they look at each other, we look at each other, and then as we're looking back to make eye contact again, Tim's rearview mirror falls off.
That's how hard the bass was hitting that day.
oh wow.
Classic.
At that game.
Corbin, I think we had quite a few of those in your little space shuttle that you drove for a long time.
Yeah, so I
The
drove
Silhouette?
around a 1993 Oldsmobile Silhouette, which for those who
Nice.
don't know, was a very popular mom van from the early 90s. It looked like a giant bullet. We called it the Space Shuttle. And probably the most memories we had from that era, despite it like always breaking down anytime we drove it anywhere and it losing its air conditioning, was when you guys graduated. No, it wasn't graduation. Yeah, Keenan had graduated, I think, from the Browns. And in their lawn, they had these signs, the party is here. And we knew, being the fly motherfuckers we are, we need these signs. So we took the signs. So anytime we wanted to go to the mall, we would first put on some Dream Theater,
Yeah.
blast the speakers, roll the windows down, and we'd flash the signs, the party is here. And then we would
Yeah,
drive
we
in
knew
front.
to time it up. We knew to time it up like the mall closed at 9, so around like 8:50, all the little like 16-year-olds would just be hanging out in front of the
Our
movie,
little prostitutes.
and we would drive around listening to progressive metal, play with the signs and the party is here. We were like, oh man, we're just the coolest.
All these like mothers with like young 7-year-old kids like grab
Yeah.
the kid and put him behind like it's a protective move when they see the creepy
Yeah.
van with the sign
I
that
mean,
says the
honestly,
party's
we had a way better chance of their moms knowing the music than the kids knowing the music.
That's true.
Man.
Yeah.
So I guess questions for Nick.
Oh.
Do you more so identify your head as a watermelon or as a honeydew?
I would say a bit of column A, bit of column B.
Okay.
I
Probably
would
the
say-
skin of a honeydew, but the innards of
Yeah.
a watermelon.
Yeah. No, I like to think of it as like if you were to like carve out a watermelon and then
Right.
glue it back together and then put it on a neck with like a full body. That's
Right.
what I have. There's not a whole lot in here, but it's the size of a watermelon.
Okay, I got you.
Not to interrupt you, and normally doing these podcasts, we don't look at chat. We don't talk about chat because we're just doing our thing, so it translates easier to our audio listeners. But we've got somebody in the chat who apparently knows Tim. They said, Tim, and then they said the hairline ruins your outfit.
Oh,
So I felt like we had to bring that up.
Oh, no.
I felt like we had to bring that up.
The hairline does ruin the outfit. It doesn't help that I've got the quarantine fade, which is essentially Jody trying to cut my hair and then whoops, and then it just becomes a buzz job. So thank you. I still love you, whoever you are listening. But yeah, I got to do something about that. It really doesn't help that, like, if you look at the other guys on the cast right now, they have luscious, thick, gorgeous hair. And I am like the polar opposite of all these dudes. You guys are making me look bad. I'm here to make you look better. I think that's what it is.
I think that's what it comes
really
down
hard to hear when all the glory coming from your house robes are sitting on my phone. And I'm just overtaken with just irate jealousy that I wish I looked like you right now.
I'm actually really upset because I thought we had all made a pact that we were going to dress up. And then I show up and you guys totally stiff me on it. And I'm sitting here in my robes with my receding hairline and a freaking idiot.
We really just wanted you to shine, though. So
Yeah.
I've got my butter beer. Freaking loser.
Oh, wow.
Cheapers.
Oh, wow.
So, Jesse, it's your turn. Introduce
Okay.
yourself for those who don't know.
So I'm Jesse. If you guys have listened to any of the other podcasts, I was doing the Lord of the Rings episode mixed with the Wheel of Time with them. So you guys have probably heard of me in the past. Since that podcast, changed my name on Twitch. So you can now find me a lot easier than the 17 character name that was my Twitch handle last time.
Yeah.
You heard here first, folks. The Nerdosphere pressured him to change his name.
It's true. Immense amount of peer pressure. They pretty much told me they were going to cut me out of the entire audio clip for that podcast if I didn't change my name because they're like, this is just garbage.
I mean, it took up a third of the audio file just to spell
Exactly.
it.
Yeah. I mean,
So what do you think,
I spent
dude?
more time spelling out my name than the actual podcast took to record. But no, so I've changed it. I am now Master Panda on Twitch. That's where you can find me. I'm streaming about 5 nights a week. Master is spelled normally. Panda is spelled Panduh.
I've got it up on the screen right
Yeah,
now.
so Master Panda.
So Jesse, what are you playing right now?
I am playing through. I'm playing a lot of Splatoon 2 on the Nintendo Switch. Been playing some Animal Crossing. I actually just finished a game that is absolutely fantastic called Celeste. It's a story of a girl climbing a mountain. It sounds super bizarre, but it's 8-bit. It's all about timing and timing jumps, mechanics, all that type of stuff. Ton of fun. Finish that, and I'm actually going to be tackling Final Fantasy VII Remake next. Is what I'm going to be playing.
Nice.
Nice. Right on.
Okay.
That's about it.
Let's move on to the next little bit here. So remember, this is the Nerdosphere. We're a podcast that discusses anything you can nerd out about, from the big screen to the small screen and anything in between. Each week we discuss a different topic, whether that be a movie or a show or a book or music. If you can nerd out about it, we'll talk about it. This week we're going to be diving into Harry Potter, which is why we brought on a few friendlies, because I'm not a Potter man, not like even in a little bit.
Clayton's not a Potterfoyle like the rest of us.
So once we get going, I'm going to bow out and let these guys geek out. Oh, sorry. Nerd out about Harry
Yeah,
Potter.
it's not the geeker sphere.
If we're establishing ourselves as Potter files, can I also bow out with Clayton as well? So I'm not associated with this.
I said this years ago.
What
Corbin started
is
calling himself a
wrong?
Potter file, and I said, you
What
don't
is
need
wrong
to
with
be doing that.
Potterfile?
You don't need to be doing that.
Anything file is just an extreme lover of the word that comes before.
But there's
Maybe
one
Potterhead.
line you definitely get associated with if you say that.
Listen, it's not my fault the pedos ruined everything, but they can't take this word. They can't take the file.
They already
They can't take it.
No, they can
They're
have
taking,
it. I feel
they're
safe.
taking the
I know.
kids, but they can't take
Corbin,
the
you can
file.
have it.
Yeah.
Potterheads. That's what
Potterheads.
I would say.
Potterfoil.
Deadhead.
Potterfoil. Potterfoil.
Oh.
I can't wait till we're like in a big like public gathering and you say I'm a Potterfile and
I'm a
everybody
Potterfoil.
mishears you.
Yep.
It's gonna be
Yeah.
great.
I'm a Potterfoil. And they just hear Potterfoil.
Clayton and I just kind of fade into the background and just let things do what they're
like
gonna do.
like the Homer.
Yeah, going into the bush.
Yep.
Fine. I won't identify as Potter Files, but I think that it's a fitting word.
Good. And remember, if you like us and want to support us, you can check us out over at nerdosphere.com, the hub for all of our content, which includes a new merch store that we've launched and a first of many temporary seasonal shirt inspired by the Tiger King. So if you were a fan of that show, go check it out. It's a pretty cool shirt. You'll also find a link over to our Patreon where you can support and become a part of the show. Also, if you're looking for a quick and easy way to help out the podcast, leave us a review on iTunes or your podcast service of choice if they allow that sort of thing. And be sure to share it with all your friends and family. If you like the podcast, I guarantee you know somebody who also would like it. So, now, with all of that, do we have news tonight, Corbin, or are we jumping directly into...
No, I'm going to stick with the tradition. When we have guests, we will bypass the news because the chit-chat tends to go on a little bit longer. And
Sure.
That's my reasoning.
Okay. All right.
And also, I'm on borrowed time, so...
I'm going to switch up the view here and let you guys get after it. So, go for
Get at it. Get at it.
Go for it.
Cool. So Harry Potter's been incredibly influential to everybody here on the cast minus Clayton. Clayton doesn't matter.
But he's not a Potterhead.
Not a Potterhead. But it's been incredibly influential to all of us. And so I thought it'd be fun just to kind of start to give everybody some perspective on where we're coming from, where our point of views come from. Just kind of go around the room. We'll start with Corbin and just say what Harry Potter's meant to you.
Harry Potter, for me, means quite a lot. It's a bonding agent that I have with Nick. It was something that I rejected for a long time. So a lot of people who know me don't realize that I was a very late bloomer for Harry Potter because I tout about how much I love it. So they just assume that I grew up with it and everything. But no, when the movies came out, I didn't like them. I liked the first couple. But as they're coming out on a yearly basis, the story seemed very shallow. It didn't seem like there was a lot going on. Partly because I, obviously wasn't paying attention to a lot of the subplots in the previous films, what was being set up. But I also hadn't read the books, so I had no deeper context of what was actually happening on the screen. So I thought the movies were lame. I didn't want to waste my time reading kids' books. And yeah, it wasn't till my 20s that I was given access to someone's Audible to listen to Harry Potter, and I couldn't stop. I've loved it. I've been to the Wizarding World. That was a life-changing event and place. Can't wait to go back. Harry Potter has become probably the fandom that I most identify with now, which to me is a little crazy to think that because I came into it so late, but it's probably one of the most passionate about.
And for all of our listeners and viewers right now, why don't you show the tattoo that you...
Oh, yeah. So hang on. I don't really know how to, hang on.
I like how moving your body has become the solution instead of your phone.
Yeah, your phone.
So I've got a Gryffindor crest on my forearm to signify the house that I was sorted into on Pottermore. And that is my ode to the Wizarding World. I plan on getting my Patronus at a later date.
And your Patronus is?
A husky.
Nice.
So
is that going to go on the left or the right butt cheek?
So it's definitely going to be, probably it makes more sense to have it on the right butt cheek so I can have the blue wispies go across the left cheek and then go up my side on my arm. So it becomes kind of like a hunt the trail. Where's the trail go and what's at the end? So
I like that.
You have to cross both buns to see the feisty
cross buns.
Does that start around the nipple? Is that where the tattoo starts? You just trace it from the nipple down.
That's actually not a bad idea.
It's a great idea.
To start at the nipple.
Fantastic.
It's great.
And just have it wispy all the way down.
And just remember, you can always add on to the trail. So, if you ever felt like it needed to wrap around your neck and maybe up to your earlobe, you could always add that on as well.
Yeah, maybe like a Post Malone inspired
There you go.
headpiece,
Yeah.
but it's just the wispy trail to my ass.
I think it'd be great. I actually think you should keep the full beard and then shave a piece of
Yes.
the beard out for
Just-
the trail.
Just the trail.
Just like,
Yeah.
like a random spot that's going to
And-
draw attention.
Here's the thing. Having the husky on my butt and having the trail go across my entire body is super fitting because my entire life growing up as a kid, I had to shop in the husky section, which is a section that JCPenney's has where fat kids go to shop without calling them fat. They're just husky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big boned.
Big
Yeah.
boned.
Just thick with 2 C's, baby.
Okay, Jesse, how about you? Where did the Harry Potter love come from, and what's it meant to you?
So I am actually also a late bloomer when it comes to Harry Potter. I didn't actually get into Harry Potter until the Goblet of Fire when it was premiering in theaters, and I actually went, no joke, because I thought Emma Watson was a total babe. So I was like, oh, okay, I have to go watch her on the big screen TV. Got into it then, and actually it got me into reading. So this is a little bit of backstory on me. This is why Harry Potter means so much to me, is I grew up dealing with dyslexia, and I hated reading, just absolutely with a burning passion. I think maybe I had made it through one like novel on my own up to maybe 14 or 15 years old, just absolutely hated it. And I had such an intrigue after leaving the Goblet of Fire movie that I went back and I essentially within like a month read all of the other books that were out up to that point, and then was anticipating the release of the last one. And that's something, it meant a lot because it actually sparked my love for fantasy novels and reading up to what I've gotten into now, which has branched off into so many other genres. So almost, for lack of a better term, Harry Potter was like a gateway drug for me when it came to reading other fantasy novels. So
That's amazing. That's great. Yeah. Absolutely.
Would you say that as you backtracked in your Harry Potter movies, you felt like Emma Watson became even more of a babe? Being a Potterphile, as you are.
I knew that's where it was going.
No, like she became more babyish. Like she became like, you know, yeah. Jesse's so uncomfortable.
just left speechless at this point.
I think you're allowed to pass on these questions.
Yeah, I think, can I pass? Like, can I just...
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Corbin, you are no longer invited into my home.
Dang it.
Oh, wow.
All right, that's fair. At least not for the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, fair. Nick, how about you?
Unlike these other guys, I grew up reading Harry Potter. The first one I got in on Chamber of Secrets. Sorcerer's Stone had already been out, but it didn't get a whole lot of play here right away in the States, I remember. So my mom bought me the first two, and we read them together. And then from Azkaban on, I read them all myself. And I've probably read the books countless times. I read them every year. And for me, they didn't just inspire me to read, but they're one of the big things that inspired me to write, which is now, what I'm pursuing for a living. So they've been, if not the most impactful, one of the most impactful things at all in my life, not just IP wise, but just thematically.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you're kind of the movie buff. Which movie would you say is the best? Not your favorite necessarily.
Oh, the best.
Or it could be the same.
I would say probably. I know the common answer is sort of all over the place, but you get Azkaban a lot. I'm a fan of Azkaban. I do like the first two for what they did for like creating that magical world, and that's the only Dumbledore that I accept. But I would probably say Azkaban's the best one. Prisoner is my favorite.
I think it's interesting that in my opinion, as the movies went on, I felt like they diverged from the books further and further. Like, I felt like the first couple of movies were like a sped up version of the books. And then by the time you get to like 4, 5, and 6, you still get the general principle of it, but you're like diverge so pretty significantly from the books at that point. Like, 5, for example, the spinning room in the end of book 5 when they're going through the doorways was one of my favorite scenes in the books, and that was just completely left out in the movies.
Yeah.
I think the counter argument to that, which I agree, in the later movies, when I look at enjoying the movies, you have to like separate the two from books and the movies.
Yeah.
But the first two stories are much shorter stories.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
The Philosopher's Stone film is pretty much verbatim the book. I mean, that's a pretty well executed
Chamber too.
adaptation.
Yeah, Chamber as
And
well.
Chamber's close too.
Yeah.
But I think the problem is that when you get into the later films, it becomes so dense. And I feel like that's why, and I was guilty of it for many years, but that's why it's almost criminal for those who have only seen the movies, because you're just like barely scratching at what the screenwriters felt like were the most relevant to put on screen.
Yeah.
There's
Totally
so
agree.
many long story arcs in the series that get absolutely no screen time at all. Like the one that always comes to mind that I always thought was really fascinating was Hermione's arc with Spew, where she is just very much so against how elves are treated. And she goes on this long campaign to try to have elves free themselves by planting clothing all over the houses so they have the ability to gain their freedom. And I always thought that was such an interesting storyline because almost none of the elves took her up on it. Like they wanted to keep doing what they were doing, and you don't get any of that in the movies at all.
No, people forget that those books, from like a social like progress standpoint, were way ahead of their time. And the movies can't focus on. They don't have the time to focus on that because they have to give you just plot as much as possible and a lot of exposition, which they just don't have the time to do. But if you go back, and especially if you've never read the books, I would like advise anybody to go check them out because that's especially
the Jim Dale version.
Do what?
The Jim Dale version, especially.
Yeah, I mean Stephen Fry is great.
Stephen Fry is the version, but it's just not the same.
No, Jim Dale's like the soundtrack of my life.
Yeah.
But they're great. They're great from that perspective. People don't realize it if you've never read the books, but socially they're way ahead of their time.
Yeah, they're really, really good.
Yeah.
Which is really weird to say because of how kiddish the first book is. I mean, it's 100% geared towards a kid that's, 8, 10, maybe 12 years old at the most.
Yeah.
And as they keep going on, they just get more mature and more complex and darker. And that's why I think Harry Potter is a great series for anyone, regardless of your age. Like you could be a grown adult who has no idea what Harry Potter is. And even if you're like me, which I'll talk about how I got into Harry Potter in a second here, even if you're like me and like the first few movies didn't speak to you at all, just stick with it. And I promise you, by the time you get to the end of the series, you will be at least interested in what's going on because it creates incredibly interesting characters with interesting abilities and struggles that are like really relatable because they're dealing with things like prejudice. Prejudice is a huge theme inside the Harry Potter world. Discrimination's a huge theme. Fear. I mean, there's just so many great themes that this just hits on that everybody would relate to.
There is one that they miss. I don't want to jump the gun if we're going to talk about this later, but there is one that they miss.
What's that?
The kids would be doing it all over that castle, and they just aren't. Kids would be just making out everywhere. It would just be,
when you enter Hogwarts, you go through an atmospheric spell that just, tones down all your hormones.
Oh, yeah. Filch is
like
going around and drugging everybody.
Just like how J.K. Rowling said that back in the day, they used to literally poop their pants and then magic it away. But then, for whatever reason, changed to plumbing.
Gotcha.
But maybe we shouldn't get into, her continued meddling right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Also, you need to follow J.K. Rowling on Twitter because she just keeps expanding the universe, and that's what Corey's kind of teasing. But people ask questions all the time about how did people wipe their butt and are they having sex, and she will actually go into depth sometimes about oh yeah, well here's what they do, and she's got this whole arc plan that we just never got to see, and I that was maybe for the best because some of the questions she gets are out there, but some of it's there if you guys want that kind of information.
Typically, Dobby likes to take the Nimbus up the butt as opposed to the Firebolt.
Yeah, that's where she's been lately.
Yeah.
All the hidden
that's not a good segue for me to talk about my love of Harry Potter at all. But let's just go ahead and do it so we can move on to the next section. I am the baby of the group. I'm the old man and the baby of the group, I think. So I did not start watching, reading, listening to Harry Potter until maybe 3 or 4 years ago at the most. So my fandom is super young. Had no interest in it going through high school. The first Harry Potter book was published in 1997, I think, but it didn't really start blowing up until maybe closer to 2000 when Chamber of Secrets came out. At that point, I was in high school. So it just wasn't something that appealed to me. And I remember actively watching the trailers for the Deathly Hallows Part 1 and Part 2. And I think I was in college when those trailers dropped. In fact, I'm positive I was in college when those trailers dropped. And I remember saying, man, I feel like I missed out because this looks really awesome. And I have no idea what's going on. I need to go back and watch that series. Never happened. I started working at the company I work for now. And somebody who I used to work with really closely is a huge Harry Potter fan. And she let Jody and I, my wife Jody and I, borrow all the DVDs. And after maybe a month of just sitting on them, we begrudgingly put in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and we turned it off during Quidditch. We were like, this is stupid. This is for a kid. This is not for us at all. Bam. Silence.
Wow.
Nothing with Harry Potter for probably 8 years, probably 10 years. Okay. Then we had our oldest daughter, and we had another kid. And it was maybe 3 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, somewhere in that window. My oldest daughter, Cammie, came home and said, hey, these kids are starting to talk about Harry Potter. And I kind of want to know what Harry Potter is. All these kids are talking about it. She's in second grade now. So this was, and my love for Harry Potter has to be just 2 years old at this point, because she was probably in kindergarten. So anyway, I decided to go out and buy the DVDs, and we watched the first one and the second one, and I was mildly interested. And then the third one hit, and I was hooked. And then I remember we'd watch the third one, and at this time my kids are still really young, and they're kind of starting to fade out as you go from the third one to the fourth one, because the themes of the Goblet of Fire are just very advanced and mature for a kid, and it's kind of dark, and they were just not interested. And I remember Jody and I saying, okay, kids are going to bed. We're going to finish watching the Goblet of Fire, and then we're just going to start burning through them. And that's what my wife and I did. We sat down, we watched the entire series in 2 or 3 days, and I've been hooked ever since then. I would have to agree with you guys. Reading the books or listening to the audiobooks, I haven't actually read the books yet, but I have listened to the audiobooks multiple times, the whole series. And the Jim Dale audiobooks are absolutely incredible. So if you have not listened to the Harry Potter books, go to your local library or hop on Audible and grab the first few Harry Potter books. If you guys haven't taken us up on this offer yet, you're crazy. But if you haven't tried Audible yet, go to audibletrial.com/nerd. And if you can't remember that URL, it's fine. Just remember you can hit us up individually, or you can go to our website and we have it linked there. But go there and you can get the books for free. You can get 1 or 2 books, depending on if you're an Amazon Prime customer, for free. And give them a listen, because they are probably the best audiobook series I've listened to. Totally worth it. So now you fast forward, what's Harry Potter mean to me? It's something that really my kids and I bond over a ton. We watch the entire series 2 or 3 times a year. We actually just stopped Prisoner of Azkaban so I can come down here and record this. So we're watching it all the time. They're like, man, can we watch Potter? I'm like, fine, yeah, watch Harry Potter instead of Trolls for the 17th time. So it's really something that I've bonded with my kids over. And it's something that I look forward to every other year. So every other year we go to Disney World, and now the Wizarding World is the highlight of that trip for me. So we've been twice at this point. And then we're going to go back again later this year. So we're really excited to take the kids there. And to be honest, Grandma and Grandpa usually come, and the kids kind of get tired of Wizarding World after an hour, and they go do something with Grandma and Grandpa. And that's the best time, because then Jody and I get to go and be kids ourselves and have some butter beers and explore the castle and really enjoy how great that world is.
I think one of the things I look forward to the most with Harry Potter is starting a family and having those moments and building those memories. And when your kid turns 11, have a calligraphy made Hogwarts letter. I've always envisioned that when my kid turns 11, I will hand them a Hogwarts letter, and inside would be tickets to the Wizarding World. And that would be the first time that we go. because at that point they'd be tall enough for all the rides and stuff anyways. But I feel like when you see other people in general geeking out about Harry Potter, it's one of those things that starts to like reinvigorate you a little bit. Like, I'm jazzed. But there's something like very like wholesome about little kids getting super into it.
I mean, 100%. So you see me, I'm wearing these Harry Potter robes and the tie, and I have this not because, don't get me wrong, I'm not mad that I'm wearing this right now, but I have this because my oldest daughter wanted to dress up as Ginny Weasley a couple years ago. And my youngest daughter is obsessed with Hermione. So much so that for almost a full year, I kid you not, almost a full year of her life, she would only answer to Hermione. So we'd be at gymnastics, she'd be at daycare, and they'd be like, Lexi. She's just sitting there staring at her. And then all of a sudden they say, Hermione. Yes. Yeah. I mean, it was like, that was her thing. So every Harry Potter, and she dresses up as Hermione. And it's one of my favorite memories that I'm going to have of my kids, for sure.
That's awesome.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So now we kind of have everybody's background on Harry Potter. And I'm going to deviate just a little bit because we kind of teased this before. But I think it'd be fun if we can just kind of go around the quick and just, what's your favorite Harry Potter book or movie? So we know that Prisoner of Azkaban is pretty universally proclaimed as probably the best because of what it did to the world, because of how complex it is with time travel. What's your personal favorite, though? We just kind of, let's go in the same order. So, Corey, why don't you kick us off?
I mean, honestly, I would have to say my favorite one to dive into is Prisoner of Azkaban. It obviously is the first book that starts to get a little bit darker tonally. But for me, it 100% boils down to the fact that Remus Lupin is probably my favorite character in the Harry Potter series. And that's really where we get the most time with him. And as far as the pie chart of the different male figures in Harry's life and how they were some sort of surrogate father figure, Remus was my favorite father figure for Harry. So I would say probably book and movie for the same reason, because I felt like he was perfectly casted. It was the last movie that John Williams scored, so it was one last hurrah. And he definitely did that with the end credits with his Lumos medley, which is like 12 minutes long, and it's like everything he ever did in Harry Potter in one score. So it was, for me, that was my favorite film as well.
Not to interrupt here, but I think you're right with the father figure. It's like the whole time Harry is like reaching for Sirius Black to be his dad. Like that's who he wanted. But he was ignoring that he had a better father figure the entire time. The guy who's trying to protect him, who's actually giving him like sound advice throughout the movie, and who's not treating him like a friend. So that's a really like interesting thing that I haven't really thought about a whole lot until you went through.
Yeah, that was for me one of the things that Harry Potter seemed to speak to me the most when I finally started listening to them was what family means and how family is more than just blood. It definitely also took place at a point in my life where it seemed like a lot of other people that are entering my life took on certain family roles, may not have been like in my immediate family. And there's just like, there are moments where, you know, Ron's dad is having a heart-to-heart with Harry, or Mrs. Weasley is having a heart-to-heart with Harry, and it just radiates out of the book how much he is loved by these other people. Some of them, it's inherently because of how awesome Lily and James were, his parents, but others were just the enamoredness of this kid and just wanting to be there and to love on him. And there are just a lot of moments like that that really just kind of moved me throughout the entire series.
Yeah, it's really interesting that Harry's motivation throughout the entire series, or a big part of his motivation, is that his parents, he didn't grow up with parents, right? Like that's a defining element of Harry Potter. And I think that's a good defining element. But when you objectively take a step back, like Harry Potter probably had more love than almost any character in that entire world, because he had the best friends, and he had teachers that like legitimately cared for him in a way that they don't care about Hermione or Ron. He had the Weasleys. I mean, you just kind of go down the list, and Harry Potter's motivation and fuel was that his parents were taken away from him, but it's also maybe his greatest strength because he's been surrounded by so much love in that. It's just a really interesting dichotomy that Harry never realizes until you get towards the end of the series.
Yeah, I will always remember I was having a conversation with Nick one time on how, when you get later in the series and you start to realize how kind of a prick James is, and you don't ever truly see any other redeeming quality from him given from memories that we as the viewer get to see. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was talking to him one time and I was like, man, all of these people are bending over backwards for Harry just because his parents are James and Lily. But all we've seen from James, even as an adult, not just like a kid, is he's kind of a douchebag. And I remember that Nick's retort at the time was, that's the evidence. That we might be seeing these memories of him being a douchebag and a prick, but all of these people are bending over backwards for Harry because he's James and Lily's kid. So there clearly is a lot of stuff that happens that we don't see that kind of at least justifies the douchebaggery or redeems him in a sense that we never get the sense of closure for as a reader.
Yeah, it's a great point. So Jesse?
So mine actually, I guess let me ask this before I go into too much detail. Are we avoiding spoilers as much as possible, or is that something that...
No.
Okay.
I truly think that this episode especially is going to be more so of the fans wanting to geek out about the legacy of HP and where it's going.
Cool. That's what I figured. I just wanted to double check because mine actually ties into a lot of what you were saying, where it was fun to see Lupin's development over the books into the father figure that Harry probably needed, even though he didn't realize that's probably what he needed a lot of. Which led to the last book actually being something that hit close to home because it's like so personally for me, I lose a lot of interest in media or entertainment when you're kind of taken out of, like, it builds up to this whole idea that this is a believable world, this is something you can relate to, and then very far and few between they actually kill off a lot of the good guys. They don't make it believable by saving everybody at the end. And that's when like the series hit a pinnacle to me, and why I really enjoy the 7th book is because you're left with so much heartbreak mixed with all of the victory that came with everything as well. So to see like all of this working up to the end here, and then you get all of the people that have been so crucial to Harry on some level or another ripped out of his life again, but it's because it ultimately came down to protecting the person that they're propping up this whole time. So the 7th book is probably my favorite. A close second would be the 5th one, because of the scene like I talked about earlier, the whole like last handful of chapters with the spinning room, with the doors, all that type of stuff. I just thought it was very well done, and it added some suspense up to the last fight with the door frame and all that. But probably the 7th book, and movie wise, I would actually say the 4th movie is my favorite. And I think that comes along with the sentimental value of that's what got me into Harry Potter. So I look at that with like rose-colored glasses, where I'm like, sure, this is kind of what started the whole series for me. So I have an extra little bit of love for that one, because without that, I wouldn't have gotten into the series.
Nick, what was your favorite book?
Yeah, I want to add too. First, about the movie, the reason I also like Azkaban from that like cinephile standpoint too, I also want to add that people forget that Alfonso Cuarón is the one that directed Prisoner of Azkaban, out of all people, weirdly, and we went on from that movie to direct Children of Men, which is just, it's crazy to me that those movies had people of that caliber directing, and like you realize how credible those films are when people try to like, oh, there's kids movies or just dumb fantasy magic movies. It's like, no, they're very legitimate films. And for a lot of people, they mean a lot. And yeah, I want to make sure I added that. That's another big reason I love it. I love the direction and the production design. But the favorite book for me is definitely right. I flip-flop between Half-Blood Prince and The Order of the Phoenix. But right, so I'd say right now probably Order of the Phoenix. It hit me at a time when I was entering my adolescence, like I was just becoming a teenager, and Harry's becoming the teenager, and he's he's really starting to deal with, like love and like heartbreak for the first time. And especially when you're like 13 and you're like, I'll never love again, my middle school relationship. Like you feel like you're Harry, you know what I mean? And it just hit me at the perfect time where I people hate it because you get this really like angst-filled inner dialogue of Harry, but I loved that, and I still do. It also feels the most relatable to this day, reading the way Harry felt about things. He has all these people around him giving him mixed signals about all these different things, and he has no idea how to feel about it. And when you're a kid, you feel the same way because you don't understand. And I feel like it's probably. It's got to be the best, and also Half-Blood Prince I love because it's still a continuation of that, but it also it really finally like pulls the curtain back on what really everything's building to with the Horcruxes and everything like that, and
sure,
so everything sets that final act in motion, and yeah, it's great.
Yeah, to tie into what you were saying about the writing style, that was something that really intrigued me, which you guys hit on a little bit. It was so amazing watching the writing style progress through the books. I wish I had experienced it at the age that the books had come out, because I would have been right around the same age as the people in school. And you can tell that she did such a good job at writing for the audience, and it makes it that much more believable, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I 100% agree that I feel like I missed out on. Anyone who grew up with the books always talked about how each new entry seemed to really speak to them tonally where they were in their life, and it matured in real time with them. So much similar to the first 3 Toy Story movies are that for basically us. Andy was us, and the third Toy Story came out right around when we were all entering adulthood for the first time and packing up our childhood and moving on to the next chapter. And it's one of those things where it's like it's just an extra little substance that makes it resonate for you.
Yeah.
So for me, my favorite's definitely Half-Blood Prince. The reveal of Snape and his past changes the game for me. It's the book and movie where we see Dumbledore's grand plan finally come to fruition, but you're also left completely confused. So it makes the last book and movie series so much better because you're left with this ultimate cliffhanger where you're like, I knew it this whole time. Snape's been a bad guy and Dumbledore misplaced his trust. So it really set up the end of the series really well. That's the one that speaks to me. And surprisingly, until this year, I would have said that Prisoner of Azkaban was my least favorite movie and book. And it's completely unique. Like almost everybody that is universally loved and respected. And it did not speak to me until the past few times I've watched it and read it. And now I can go into it with just like a fresh scope and a fresh mindset. And there are so many great things done in that movie that you don't see anywhere else. It's got a horror element to it. It's got that Halloween feel, which I love. And I would argue that it is the best music in any of the Harry Potter movies. There's music everywhere and it's different and it moves. And as somebody who absolutely loves music, that's the big draw for me with Prisoner of Azkaban. It's so well done.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good spot for us. We have a lot of good topics to kind of close out with here in a few minutes, but let's take a quick break and pay the bills as we do. So I kind of teased this before. If you guys are watching this or listening to our podcast and you have not taken us up on our offer for Audible, you are crazy because it's a really good offer. You've got a ton of time on your hand right now. You know you do, right? Like we're in quarantine, we're all bored. Now is a great time to give audiobooks a try. I was personally super skeptical about audiobooks. I was not a big fan of reading in general, but I would go through spurts where I'd binge read a few books. Now it's the polar opposite for me. I'm always listening to a book. It's great for a commute. We're going to be heading back to normalcy here soon. So now is a great time to stock up on a couple of audiobooks. We try and do reviews for new books every week. I'm not going to do a review today. Instead, I really would recommend, if you don't know what to get Jim Dale's Harry Potter series. Start with the first book. see what we're talking about. As we've said, the first book's pretty much a carbon copy of the movie. So if you like the movie, you're going to like the book, but it's just going to keep building on itself. And as the book series goes on, it just builds and builds. And because something's so much bigger than what the movies can do. So head on over to our website, which is the nerdosphere.com. You can go to our special offers tab. It'll take you straight to the right spot for Audible. If you are feeling bold and brave, you can go to audibletrial.com/nerd, and that will also get you in for a free trial membership. So head on over to audibletrial.com/nerd or our website today and get signed up and give it a shot. It doesn't cost you anything. You can cancel anytime. So go get you a couple free audiobooks while you can.
Bravo. Snaps for Tim.
Now, Corbin, you've got something special planned for Hunt a Killer, right?
So, no, I was going to do the Patreon plug.
Oh.
I was going to put Nick on the spot and make him be my Nick Piggy to my Corby the Frog. But he's feeling a little bit bashful. I don't know if he wants to do it. But I'm game to improv a Patreon ad if you want to, Nick Piggy.
I'll give it a shot. I think it's going to be terrible, but who cares?
Exactly. Who cares? I cannot stress this enough. Despite how this might sound, something that Tim or Nick and I used to do, besides just driving around aimlessly listening to music, is we would sometimes just slip into a Kermit and Miss Piggy voice, and we would just have conversations because that's what married couples do.
You have me intrigued.
He's my forest wife. So, hey there, Nick B. How are you today?
Oh, Kermit. Oh, I miss you so much.
Hey, I was looking at the recent billing statements, and I saw a few things that were a little strange on the Amazon shopping cart. Did you really just spend $208 on new makeup and dresses?
Of course I did.
But why? Nick, did you at least leave me my coin purse?
Okay.
This is a train wreck, but that's okay. Essentially, all this is meant to say is to be a $5 a month supporter of the Nerdosphere, it literally is a quarter of a day. A quarter a day to be a $5 a month supporter. And while Miss Piggy has drained my bank account and I am dirt poor and I'm broke as shit, I can still at least pay the Nerdosphere for a quarter a day. So I have to contact the bank tomorrow morning to try to reverse all these claims, but even me can afford to support the Nerdosphere, and so can you.
I thought for a second we might get a Tiger King mashup.
That's what I was thinking.
I'm broke as shit.
I was trying to go there.
Yeah.
I'm broke as shit. I have done drugs, and I am gay. Sorry, Miss Piggy. I do have a man's hand up my butt the entire time.
I was trying to think of a Carol Baskin line to use for Miss Piggy, but
oh, that's really good.
Fucking Carol Baskin. That's all I can say. Clayton's got the biggest grin because he just feels how uncomfortable that was.
That was good. It's really good.
I literally just couldn't do it. My voice just broke. I couldn't do it. I can't go that high anymore.
Man. That was the exact type of conversation I'm always happy to be a fly on the wall for.
It's fascinating. Like, this is a great element. So if you need the podcast and support us, but I find it incredibly fascinating to watch voice actors get into character and change their voice. So if you're looking for something like that, Corbin does a great job of that on every episode. So be sure to give us a watch on Twitch. And I'm pretty sure we're going to find a way to put this on YouTube, maybe, and some other place. Yeah, we're going to put it on YouTube. So give it a watch if you're interested in seeing how ridiculous Corbin can look while he's doing Kermit the Frog.
I really appreciate the compliments I always feel so much better after I talk to you.
There are a lot of backhanded compliments.
Yeah,
I feel like. Yeah. He broke character for that. Like,
his Kermit's kind of an asshole.
He's a drug addict. He's broke as shit.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's keep the Harry Potter conversation going. We have seen the cinematic universe expand over the past couple of years with the introduction of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Now, I don't want to spoil my take on it, but I will just leave out there that I have been less than impressed with Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. I think the movies are lacking several of the critical elements that made the Harry Potter series so special to me. But I also realize that my fandom is very limited, and I don't know as much about the expanded universe as you guys might. So I'm really genuinely interested in how you guys feel about Fantastic Beasts and the current future that we see planned for the Wizarding World.
Can I start with a brief story?
Yes.
It's with Corbin. So Corbin had already seen, I do believe you'd already seen the second Fantastic Beasts when this happened. But then you took me, I went with you to see it, my first time to see The Crimes of Grindelwald. And there's a scene where Ezra Miller's character, spooky, repressed, McMagic-y, I forgot what his name is, but he's supposed to go into this room where he's like finding something about his parents, and there's a dwarf woman in there who, the way the music swells and it's shot and everything, you're supposed to be going, oh, holy shit, it's that girl. Like, that's this huge character. That's somebody super important. And I just remember leaning over to Corbin, and this is coming from somebody who's obsessed with the lore. I just leaned over to Corbin and I just said, who the fuck is that? And
Yep.
From that moment on, that's exactly how I feel about the entire rest of those movies combined.
Yeah. So for me, there's a couple things at play. One, I just think it's a mistake for J.K. to be writing the screenplays herself, because it was like her first time doing it. It's quite clear. Now, if you read the screenplay of Fantastic Beasts, it's not much better than the movie, but when it's in her words, certain things resonate better. So, like, for instance, at the very end, when he captures Grindelwald in the first film, the screenplay describes it as Newt grasps his wand confidently, and a mysterious bright light flashes from his wand and ensnares Grindelwald. That's not what happens in the movie. It's a creative choice to use his beast Spitfire thing to capture him. So, like, there's just creative elements like that even when she's writing the screenplay, they still don't come to life. And so there's an argument to be made where it's like, I'm all for more movies, but I need more written works so that I truly understand what's supposed to be happening. I think that it is a mistake to bring David Yates on to start a franchise when David Yates was the director that was brought on to close out the series when it was at its most adult tier. So when we're being introduced to the American Wizarding World, this should be, for the audience, even the long-term fans, a similar tonal experience to seeing Diagon Alley for the first time. We're seeing how the Americans Wizarding World acts. There needs to be a whimsical element, but David Yates' tone is so drear, gray, and bleak, it just doesn't mesh well. It doesn't work. And so I feel like there's a staleness to the movies. And I just also don't think that she really had it all planned out appropriately, because every time I go back to the later books and hear what's Albus's brother's name? I forget.
Aberforth.
When Aberforth is talking to the kids about how Ariana was murdered and their confrontation with Grindelwald and stuff, like, it doesn't add up to what these movies are. And it's very strange to me. I just don't think that they're doing what they need to be doing. And the fact that they initially wanted to make 6 movies out of this, and thank God are narrowing it down to less, you're just like stretching it too thin. It's like when they made The Hobbit. There's not the content there.
Yeah, I almost feel like when they first announced an expansion like this of the Wizarding World, I got really excited because it was kind of at like the peak of me getting into the whole series, and all of that. Like, not getting into, but like I was still immersed in the fandom. It was still something I wanted to see more of, and I feel like they really missed the mark on making this TV content. In the day and age that we are living in with the TV content that's out there, I feel like it would have been better produced as a TV show to build that weekly suspense, to build more stuff along those lines. And I feel like it just completely missed the mark, which is really sad because I actually care for a lot of the actors and actresses that star in the film so far. That's left me feeling a little bit disappointed by well, not a little bit, very disappointed by the way that everything has played out, because you're kind of left feeling like it's a little lackluster. Like, okay, so they did so well with the other films. Why are we getting this almost like it almost felt rushed to me. It was like, we need to capitalize. I guess, let me rephrase. It felt like a money grab to me. It felt like they wanted to capitalize more on the popularity of Harry Potter, and they rushed these films out there because it was the popular thing. Not because the content backed what they wanted. It was that they needed to push content out there to meet the demand. And that's the disconnect for me. It's sure, we're getting quantity, but it's far from the quality that we had before that.
There's also something to be said that, like, as fans, we're now expected. So as I said earlier in the podcast, as when you're a Harry Potter fan of the books and movies, you have to look at them separately.
Yes.
But as fans of the Wizarding world, we are now forced to take Fantastic Beasts as canon, whereas the original movies aren't canon. They're a visual aid to the books we grew up, but they're not the story of the books. But now we have these new movies being made, and we're supposed to accept the fact that it is 100% canon with the books as well, and it's just strange.
Yeah,
it's very strange because. And I understand why maybe she wanted to take a break from Harry Potter. But to me, the more fascinating angle to take, what I would have preferred to see, and what I would still prefer to see moving, would either be a prequel to Harry Potter, where we get to see James and Lily and Voldemort's rise to power fall. I think that would make a fascinating series and potentially a great movie. Or let's just follow Harry more. And I know we kind of get this with Cursed Child, and we're going to talk about that from a high level here later. Let's just follow Harry afterwards with his career as an Auror and have him just going hunting down evil wizards. I think that would also be really, really good. Instead, we get Fantastic Beasts. And there are some things I like about the series. I think the acting has been really, really good. I think the magical creatures, for the most part, have been really, really good. It's missing the same heart to me that I had through Harry Potter, and it's not as intriguing. If Harry Potter was coming out, if my fandom for Harry Potter was when the movies were coming out, that is can't miss day one movie for me, no doubt. Fantastic Beasts, I'd probably just catch it when it drops on Vudu or something.
Yeah, and what I think the big disconnect for me, and don't get me wrong, I love Eddie Redmayne. I think he's a fantastic actor. I don't like Newt Scamander at all as a character. I think he is completely flat. I think he's a monotone character that doesn't offer. I mean, to me, like, sure, he kind of has this like shy, bashful like side to him where you can tell that he's been more immersed in animals and creatures than anything else, but then you're left wanting more, and nobody steps up to fill that role. So you're just left with this like very dry character that you can't relate to very much, or get attached to, and there's not the secondary character that can carry in the times that you're left wanting more from Newt Scamander.
Yeah, I think the second film does a decent job at trying to develop the fact that he's autistic in some way.
Yeah.
Which for representation is like a cool thing.
Yeah.
But it's I don't want to say it's not heavy-handed enough, but I will say that I think the second movie in the franchise to make that point is too late.
Exactly. If
to retcon the explanations for why he was maybe a little bit dull in the first one.
Exactly. Like if I had known that coming in, I wouldn't have already had a warped perception of Newt Scamander. Like if I had had a little bit more of a glimpse of that, I wouldn't have come into the second one. I felt like it missed the mark on the impactful hit that it delivered in the second one when they could have done it in the first.
Yeah. Nick and I used to talk all the time about movies we would rather them see.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We would talk. One movie that stands out to me in a franchise is like Rogue One, which is a Star Wars spinoff that enhances the viewing experience of episode 4. You have more context of what's happening, and it's a great standalone movie. And we would always talk about how if you're going to expand the Wizarding World and it not be a totally original story in a different time period, that's where you need to go. There's so many story elements with just Lily and James, with the Marauders. I know that Nick has a lot to say about it, so I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to shut my lip. But that's exactly where it should have gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think she like built in a trilogy in my mind of films, or a trilogy. You could do a like 3-season arc, on HBO Max or something with, the prophecy about Harry says that his parents and or Neville's parents defied Voldemort 3 times. Those are 3 separate stories that we've never seen. Yeah. That you have all 3 that build up to the start of the story that creates, the most important book series of our generation, if not ever. So those 3 stories, just like Corbin said with Rogue One, it's like, how did they get the plans for the Death Star? That's fascinating. I want to see that. How did Harry's parents become these legendary figures? Not just because they're martyrs in the cause to defeat Voldemort, but because they stood up to Voldemort and defied him, not just once, not just twice, but 3 times. And also Neville's parents, I feel like, because they didn't touch that at all in the movies, which is probably the biggest miss for me.
Yeah. And
I feel like giving the Longbottoms, Frank and Alice, their due is something important. I feel like it's something that you owe the fans a little bit. I'm never one of those who's like, oh, I hate when they, like Michael B. Jordan can't be the Human Torch. You owe the fans a real Johnny Storm. No, I don't agree with that. But I feel like when you leave out such an important arc to an entire book series like that, you do owe it to the fans to show we know what we did, and we have this trilogy or 3-season arc, and I think you could make something fascinating with that, especially with the money that HBO has on HBO Max.
Yep.
I feel like there's a lot there. And like I told Corbin, all you'd need to do, you don't have to do any exposition. We know who the Order of the Phoenix are. All you have to do is walk in and be like, oh, that's Sirius Black, that's Remus Lupin. I know where I'm at right now. Boom.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's where it's almost like they had all of this content laid out before them, and then they didn't use almost any of it correctly. Is where it's like, okay, but that's not what we want to see. And I feel like if they had just listened, then they would have been like, oh, this is what they want to know more. Like a prequel. I mean, like, who doesn't want to know more about what happened? I would love to watch Voldemort's rise to power. Like, that would be absolutely fantastic.
Well, you want to talk about like a unique narrative tool. Like, I had thrown out doing a show on the Marauders, but if you were to have a movie series actually follow Voldemort, I mean, that's a unique narrative structure in itself, is watching a person kind of descend into their own selfish desires and become the Wizarding World's greatest villain.
So here's a question that I've had a debate with a couple of my friends over. Do you think they're steering away from that because they realize that the audience that's watching Harry Potter might not be ready for that dark of a story arc? So, like, I mean, if you think about what happened, what's alluded to before Harry Potter coming of age, it's all darker than a lot of what you see. Sure, it builds up to it, but it builds you into it slowly. Like, I've wondered at times if they're worried about diving into that side of, like, the witchcraft and wizardry that scares a lot of demographics away from it. Because that was something that I dealt with growing up. My parents, for a long time, didn't want me to read Harry Potter because I grew up in a Christian household, and they didn't want me involved with it because it was witchcraft and wizardry. And now looking back on it, it's no different than the wizardry that you get in Lord of the Rings and some of the other stuff that we've grown up loving. But I've often wondered if they're worried about showing that darker side because it's going to tap into a different audience.
For me, I could see that being one of their underlying thoughts. And it would make sense not to tackle the darker material right after you ended the series, because you're still working with a relatively young fan base. But the series has been over for a long time, and we're at the point, like I said, where I'm introducing my kids to it. So I think a dark series would still work, because all the parents that grew up with Harry Potter are now having kids, and they still love it, and they're getting reinvested in it right now because they're showing it to their kids. And so to me, it's like the perfect time to do it.
Yeah.
I don't see why they don't.
Yeah.
It has to be just burnout, right?
Yeah, I think the thing is the thing I always have to remind myself too is we're dealing with like film executives who are like, I know that that's something that I want to do professionally, but they're just creatively, they have no idea what they're doing. And like for them, all they needed to hear was J.K. Rowling is going to write 5 movies for us. I don't care what else we could possibly be doing. That's what we're going to do. It could be anything. Just give it to us. Like all the idiots out there are going to pay money for it. Because that's the way they think of us. That they're like, well, if she's going to do it, then they're going to pay the money for it. We'll just pull the wool over them. They have no idea. They'll just keep paying for it. And unfortunately, they've been right for the first 2. And I think so. As much as we might have good ideas for like content, I think they still, for them, all they're going to see is numbers and how they can look at it in focus groups and make it make sense to them.
I'm still surprised that the author hasn't gone there. Like, I understand there being some trepidation from film executives because it's such a beloved property and such a huge world that you could really just mess it up and it would be a career ender. But J.K. Rowling's she's still writing. She's actively writing under her pen name. And it's dark material. It's rated R material. So it's not that she's uncomfortable with it. It's got to be that she's just trying to prove that she's not a one-stop shop, that she can do more than Harry Potter. So she's trying to make a name doing other things. But I feel like when you're at this stage of your career, like, just give people what they want.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
Did you hear me?
We got you now.
There we go.
Like a movie about the founders, a movie about Helga, Rowena, Godric, and Salazar. Like, I don't even necessarily need a trilogy, but a story about the 4 most prolific wizards in all of Wizarding Kind and how they came together to build the school. Like, there's also that era also, I feel like, is a tone for the Wizarding World we haven't seen and would work so well. So, like, what I mean is, with the Fantastic Beasts movies, they went to the speakeasies of the Roaring Twenties, and they were so desperate to make their wizards look cool and wear 3-piece suits all the time that it creates a visual disconnect on how they get back to where they were in the 90s, where they're wearing like whimsical robes and shit. But in the day and age of the founders, it is more of a medieval era. It's a time where witch trials were truly taking place, and the reason why they even put it in the Highlands of Scotland was because it was so far away from the Muggles, because the prejudice against witches and wizards was so intense. I mean, that's like a cool story, and visually it would be incredibly unique for a Harry Potter film.
Yeah.
Corbin, do you think this is a good time to pitch my solo film for my favorite character from the Order of the Phoenix, that who I'm talking about? But
yeah, it's your perfect time.
Okay, cool. So I want to talk about Kingsley Shacklebolt solo film, and
that's where the trivia questions came from.
Yeah. I kid, of course, but at the same time, I feel like you could easily think of a solo film, because he becomes the. This might be a good segue for you, Tim, to get into the Cursed Child, if you guys do want to talk about that. But Kingsley Shacklebolt becomes the Minister of Magic after Voldemort, the fall of Voldemort at the end of the 7th book. And I feel like he even would be an interesting, especially because I think you could make a very strong argument that in the Harry Potter films, representation is something that they lack in just a little bit. People have made that argument, and I think I could see it both ways. But for somebody like him, I feel like he could easily be a fun way in for a TV series, especially on HBO Max, about the man who takes over the wizarding world and how he rebuilds from the fall of Voldemort, which they reference in The Cursed Child.
Yeah, I mean, and you could really talk about like how politically corrupt the Ministry of Magic was throughout the series. And if you just watch you don't get to see the extent of the corruption that you get in the books, but it's like fudge, and you just keep going down the list. They were all so incredibly corrupt. There would be a great story if you were just to go down there and you think about some of the big shows or movies out right now that are dealing with those topics. You could plug that right into the world as well.
Yeah.
Great. So you just kind of mentioned it. Do you kind of want to give us a teaser on what the Cursed Child is, and we'll talk about our thoughts?
Yeah, just a brief overview, essentially. If you've never heard the story, essentially is so it picks up at the time of the epilogue in the end of the 7th book, and it follows Harry's youngest son, Albus, when he first goes to Hogwarts, and he's the first Potter to be sorted into Slytherin. And essentially he forms this bond with Draco's son, Scorpius. I have meant to look back through it, so this is just off the top of the dome, so hopefully I'm getting it all right. But essentially, Voldemort and Bellatrix Lestrange had a daughter named Delphi, and she poses as a Diggory, and I think she eventually, but basically what happens is she steals like a new super time turner from Harry and attempts to go back and make it so that Voldemort never falls in the first place. And so Scorpius and Albus are going through time and attempting to stop her. This culminates, since we're doing, so you guys know where it ends, and since we're doing spoilers, it culminates with a scene where Harry and Scorpius and Albus watch Voldemort kill Harry's parents in the end. They have to let it happen and watch it happen, which in the book, that's like probably the most harrowing scene. It's a great scene to watch. But outside of that, there are some true game-breaking elements that don't really add up. And also it just becomes sort of it doesn't make sense, and it also doesn't really, it seems to have no reason for existing when you finally finish the story, because it actually solves nothing. Nothing happens really at the end.
Because isn't like one of the linchpins of it all that if Cedric Diggory didn't die, Voldemort would have won. And that's
so the two linchpins of it are that Harry. So in the book, Harry has, like, you realize that, like, because Tim, you pitched a great idea where you see Harry going through as an Auror and tracking down these these evil wizards, and you find out that he really didn't do much of that. He just, like, tried to get to a desk job as quick as possible, and he becomes the head of magical law enforcement, and so he's like scared to face anything like that now. And so you find out that it's the two linchpins are Harry has to, like, confront the idea that he's partially to blame for Cedric Diggory's death, which doesn't add up in my mind in the first place. And second, that if Cedric hadn't died, he would have eventually become a Death Eater, and Voldemort would have won. But also, if Harry's parents hadn't died, Voldemort wouldn't have fallen the first time, and it never would have been a problem. So but it's also just, it's such obvious storytelling in the sense that, like, oh, if he didn't fall the first time, he wouldn't. Oh, if he didn't fall the second time, then he wouldn't have fallen, and he probably would have won.
It's a butterfly effect movie, essentially, right?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, it's been one of the number one shows on Broadway for a couple of years now, and we're starting to see it come to local theater. So if you're interested in Harry Potter or the expanded universe, there is a good chance that The Cursed Child is going to be in a city near you sometime in the next year or two. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
It's just interesting because we know that Warner Brothers wants to make a movie out of The Cursed Child. We know The Cursed Child is immensely popular, but I have never talked to a Harry Potter fan that likes The Cursed Child, which is interesting. It's interesting that it's so successful and it's so popular, but I've never had a heart-to-heart with any other Potterhead that was like, The Cursed Child is my jam. The common complaints are always, and it's partly because J.K. didn't write it, but there's a lot of character inconsistencies. The way that Harry was a parent to Albus, and kind of, having been the chosen one, you'd think he'd have a little bit more empathy for him going to school and never living up to the shadow of his dad. So there's just a lot of elements that I remember hearing people talk about when they read those, and it didn't feel like Harry Potter. It didn't feel like the characters. Didn't feel right. And so I guess, like, my thing is, if they do make a movie, which we know that they will, should they even attempt to do an actual adaptation, or should they just take the spirit of it, of following Harry's kids, and hopefully more so of Harry, because that's another complaint that I got from fans, is that you don't spend enough time with Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Do you just make a Cursed Child movie and just make it more original, or do you double down and actually adapt that story that so many fans seem to despise?
That's tough.
Yeah, it's a tough question.
I think the problem you're dealing with is the Harry. If you haven't read the Cursed Child, or if you haven't seen it, and you just encounter that film, having read the books or seen the movies, the Harry that you encounter in the Cursed Child you immediately will look at that and be like, that's not. He's this weak, scared man who has like, they write it like it comes across like it's paranoia, but they're trying to write it like it's this like sentimental fear of the things that he's faced in his past. But the Harry that you encounter it just doesn't track that he would become that kind of a person, you know? And I mean, it's plausible. I'm sure you could find a way to write it, but it doesn't feel genuine in the way they write it in the script, because you're, like you said, Corbin, you don't spend enough time with him. And so you feel this pull towards, I don't feel like this is a canonical follow-up to the Harry Potter book series. This feels like a splinter series that happens to follow a different Harry who maybe barely, like, even though the Harry in the books barely made it through, this one barely made it through with any bravery whatsoever. He was terrified and like had
Neville,
no clue. Yeah.
before he fully evolved.
Yeah, exactly.
The cursed child is if Neville was the chosen one.
Yeah, well, that's a big part of the book too. That Cedric Diggory kills Neville. They go back. Delphi, I don't know, Riddle, whatever her last name is, would be. In the book, it's Diggory, but it's, you know, she's posing, she's using polyjuice.
Yeah.
But she convinces Cedric to kill Neville, so he can never kill Nagini. Voldemort never falls. Harry dies. It's a lot of just, it's, you know what it is. It's Harry Potter's Endgame. Is all
I
it
was
is.
just going to say, it sounds like Endgame, where you're
100%.
just going back and trying to tweak small events that happened in a universe that we've already binged.
Yeah, you're right. That's it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I think we have time for, one more big topic, and that is the potential for a Harry Potter reboot. So we are in the day and age where reboots are the thing. We're seeing Disney reboot everything, and it's going live action. We're seeing reboots left and right. So Harry Potter is a beloved movie series. Let's just stick to the movie series, since the book series should never be touched. Would you guys like to see the Harry Potter series rebooted, either through a new series of movies or through television? And what would you want to see focused on in that reboot that's different than what we have right now?
Yes. So I'm at a point now where I would love a Harry Potter reboot. My caveat to a reboot is truly the aesthetic of the Wizarding. So I think we're ready to grow up with a new cast. I think we're ready to dive into the Harry Potter story on a platform like HBO, where you can do at least a season per book, if not more seasons, certain books, to truly dive into all of the nuanced subplots that happen in the books. But my caveat to it all is I truly would want visually nothing to change. And I know that would be hard, because you're going to have all these new creatives coming on to create a new art design for the IP. But the disconnect for me is, while I look at the movies and the books as two separate things of something that I love, the Wizarding World, when I read the books now, I picture the movies. And when you go to the Wizarding World at Universal, you feel like you're in the world you read about. You don't feel like you're on a movie set. Feel like you're in the Wizarding World that you either grew up or you fell in love with reading. And there will be kind of it's fun to pretend while you're there that you were actually there. And if you were to have this new aesthetic for the way things looked or happened, you then would be going to Universal and choosing your merch of Wizarding World 1 or Wizarding World 2. And it kind of breaks down the illusion of being there. And that's kind of like my thing, is I would really need it to I would want Hogwarts to look very similar. I would want robes to look similar for that aspect alone.
Yeah, I think you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you reboot and you change the visual aspect of it, because there's so much groundwork that's been laid already that I think going back and trying to do something different would be a little bit difficult, which is it's kind of the hesitation I have with the Lord of the Rings series coming out, is you have this world that's been established and then going back and changing it is kind of it's daunting to think about. That not daunting, but it spooks me a little bit thinking about the idea of them taking the groundwork that we've had and upheaving it and changing it. But I think it would be the perfect way to reboot it if you did a TV series up to the years of Harry Potter. So you could get in a couple of seasons of what happened before Harry Potter took place. And then if you did want to change the cast to reinvigorate the series that happened already, then you move into the years of Harry Potter done as a TV show. And you've already established it again, but you're introducing a new generation to a new cast of people, and kind of sprucing it up a little bit to where you don't feel like they're trying to fit something into something that's already there. It's a reimagining of what was there with the same aesthetics that you already have.
And you cast Adam Driver as Snape.
Yes.
Ooh, that is good. I like that.
Yes.
Because he would bring something that is not an Alan Rickman copy, but it would be an original. I think that he would be perfect for Snape.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I'm of two minds. I think it's a little soon, but at the same time, I'm thinking from that like executive standpoint. You're right. So okay. So I think I'm ready for that, and I would like to see it as a TV show. I think you need to find like a singular vision. I think that's the problem you have with the movies is that you have 4 different directors. You feel like you have 4 different sets of movies, or 3 different directors. So you have 3 different sets of movies. You have the Chris Columbus first 2, which are clearly different. You have Alfonso Cuarón's, which is clearly different, and you have David Yates, which is also clearly different. And I think if you get a showrunner, and if I had to just off the top of my head pick a showrunner, I would probably go Steve Blackman, who's doing Umbrella Academy right now. I think he has the right idea of how to design a series and cast a series that would feel like the original, but still feel like you're like, oh, I'm watching something new and it's something I can grow up with and I can pitch to executives, but also to a new cast and to a new fan base that this is your Harry Potter and this is what you're growing up with. And each one of these seasons, you're going to be following a book and you're going to grow up with these characters. And I think that is, if you get a singular vision behind it, I think a reboot would be wonderful.
I think that's something that I'd even talked with Clayton and Tim about, is because of quarantine, I've recently re-binged Dexter, which if anyone who's watching, if you watch Dexter, you need to watch Dexter. It's so good.
Only watch the first 7 seasons, though.
I think it's worth watching to the end, but it is not a payoff at all.
I will disown you as a friend if you tell me that the 8th season of Dexter is worth watching. It is one of the most horrendous versions of TV I've ever watched.
But that's like saying watch Game of Thrones, but don't finish it.
If I could not watch season 7 and 8 of Game of Thrones, I would go back and erase it from my memory.
Whoa. Season 7 was just fine.
No.
Season 8, Season 7 was good.
Hey, spoilers. Last time I watched the show, the Viper's head was smashed by the mouse.
Oh my god, you're still there.
No, season 8, again, I'll let you get back to your train of thought with Dexter here in a second.
Sorry.
Dexter season 8 literally takes every character that I've loved and flips them upside down and is like, hey, here's the character now. And it has nothing to do with anything that was written before that. And it's just completely unbelievable. The way that season 7 of Dexter ended was immaculate. It should have ended right there, and you're left to interpret what happened. I have an ending for Dexter that I will get into after you're done with your train of thought that I want to know how you think, because I have a way that I think it should have ended, and I think it would have been fantastic. But go on.
Right.
Clayton's ears are perking up.
Yeah, he's like, oh, we're talking about Dexter now, or no more Harry Potter? Is that what so for me, one of the most unique things about Dexter, and it's not something that can always be done, but it's the narrative tool. Being inside Dexter's head is one of the things that makes that show not just stand apart, but makes it so unique. Because Dexter, as like an emotionally underdeveloped character, it's interesting to see how he processes events and to actually see how he starts to grow. He doesn't really start to grow emotions per se, but he creates these interesting attachments that are almost equal to an emotion. And if you were to have a character like Dexter exists in a traditional medium where it's all show don't tell, you would be missing a lot of critical detail on his character's development because you're not inside his head. And for me, one of the biggest things with Harry Potter is I would like the show to utilize that tool. Harry Potter as a book series is always on Harry's shoulder. So this is a tool that would work well because you're never really going off on side tangents with other characters. You're always with Harry.
Yeah.
And one of my biggest problems with movies is Harry is a whiny bitch. And, and maybe that's because we're not in his head. I do think that the Harry in the movies is written differently than the Harry in the books, but I can't help but think that part of that is because we don't see how he's connecting the dots to bring him to what he's saying next or what his next action is.
Yeah.
And Harry as a character doesn't get by with dumb luck. He is a talented wizard, and he is incredibly thoughtful, and his brain is always going. And to have that kind of connection with the protagonist and grow up with him, we're not just seeing like how he grows up and acts with people, but we're seeing how his internal thought is evolving over years. Would be an extra level of immersion that I think would be perfect for the show.
But I would caution you that don't forget that, like, especially from like a writing perspective, in screenwriting, especially voiceover is like the biggest sin you can commit unless it's really good. And in the books, I don't even disagree with you. I'm just sort of pitching this out there, but in the books, it's third person limited. It's not first person. So I feel like the first time you hear Harry going like, I was so upset and I was this, I feel like it might start to seem way more angsty and way more whiny than you might want it to. So if you could figure out a way to make it not that way, I think you're right, but I feel like it's a really fine line.
So,
because I've also always thought, because of the narration aspect, I think the show is that the movies are missing. I've always believed Harry Potter would be perfect for an anime as well.
Yes.
I think that the writing style and the visual style, honestly, how some scenes are just like described, seems like an anime experience.
That would work there.
Yeah.
But that's, again, for me, my creative quest would be using a narrative tool.
Yeah.
So what's your Dexter ending?
Yeah.
Before we get to Tim's, before we get to Tim's aspect of the reboot.
So I think if you wanted to, I don't think the reason I don't think season 8 needed to end is because I think you could have had the ending, and I don't know how you incorporate it into the end of the 7th season, but I think the perfect ending for Dexter would have been him waking up, sitting on the electric chair, and you are seeing his life flash before his eyes before he dies. It fits with the inner dialogue he's had the whole time. You have this inner look into Dexter's thought process this whole time, and then you go back to realize the only thing he cared about is everything that you saw, and it's happening in the like he's reliving his life before he dies. It would have been so much better than him going off to be a lumberjack.
I like that. I also liked Tim's idea of Deb just should have shot him in the church.
Totally my idea. If you're a fan of the Nerdosphere and you listen to the cast, it wasn't Clayton's idea. It was my idea.
Yeah.
That Deb should have just turned. Deb should have just turned on Dexter in the shipping canister and popped him. And then it ends right there, and you don't deal with anything else.
Okay, so you had me lost there for a second because the only scene with the church that I thought of was the 6th season when she walks in, and I was thinking to myself, I was like, the shipping container makes sense. The church did not make sense.
Yeah, it's the shipping container.
The shipping container makes sense.
Sitting there with LaGuerta, and LaGuerta's screaming at her to shoot Dexter.
Yep.
If only we knew what Clayton felt about this.
This was my idea.
We got him back.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have been fantastic.
That's how the show should have ended.
Yeah. I think it could have ended
instead of killing LaGuerta, she should have killed Dexter. And then you could have had a follow-up episode basically condensing Deb's arc in season 8, like with all that turmoil from killing LaGuerta, into like a final episode where we catch up with what she's been dealing with, catch up with the police department, catch up with Harry.
I'd like to think that she's like after she makes that decision that LaGuerta propels her to be like this face of the department and this high-ranking official, and she's so torn up about the fame that she's gotten because the fame came from her killing her brother who she loved.
Yeah.
Just an incredibly interesting dynamic.
But I also don't mind the Jesse ending because it's almost like an artistic ending to the show.
Yeah, I like that ending.
The reason that ending made sense to me is because his number, you would look at it at the end of it being that his only regret in life was that he corrupted the one person that he cared about, which was Deb. Like, when it all breaks down to it, Deb was about the only person that he had any attachment to. Realistically, I mean, he had momentary attachments to other characters, his kid, his wife, like all of that type of stuff. But Deb was the ultimate, like, he changed his process to try to protect Deb, and then by the end of it, he corrupted her, and that would have been the last thing that he saw was, I tried to do all of this, I was unsuccessful, like, so then you'd be left with this, like, conflicting thing, like, okay, they caught him.
Let me make this a little better. They're in the shipping container. LaGuerta's yelling, "Shoot him." Dex is giving her that look, and she shoots herself instead. And then Dexter melts down. LaGuerta arrests him, and then you go to your ending, where he's on the electric chair, and you realize, like, him witnessing his sister kill himself because she couldn't do either one. She was in the impossible situation, and he ultimately just lost his will to live.
Yeah.
And the final frame is the ghost of Harry just staring, going, fuck.
Oh, that's funny. We can get back on subject. I'm sorry, I kind of took us down a rabbit.
No, it's okay.
Right. So Tim, reboot Harry Potter.
I say no. I'm going to be the guy
reboot.
I'm going to say the guy who says no, but I'm going to put a big asterisk next to it because I think one of you guys mentioned this, and I think I agree completely. I am not for a straight up Harry Potter reboot just yet. I would prefer for them to do a prequel series and then build that universe up. And then at that point, you figure a prequel series, if you get 3 movies or if you do 3 to 4 seasons of a show, I would actually love to see it in a show because I think we've all learned that for an in-depth world, shows just work exponentially better. So give me 3 or 4 seasons of a show. That gives me even more time between the Harry Potter movies. And then let's go into it. But if they were just going to say, hey, we're just going to redo the Harry Potter series, would I go watch it? Absolutely. I'm going to go watch it if they redo it. I just don't think that's the right choice because I don't think anything in the Harry Potter movie series is out of date. I think it all is still relevant and it still works and the effects are still good. And there's really not a lot to gain from just redoing the series straight out.
So what do you show, if you don't mind me asking, I know Jesse, you said the same thing. What do you guys show so let's say you're taking it like 3 seasons and then you start the book series. What are you showing for those 3 years ahead of time? Or is this like decades earlier?
I want to see that. For me, I want to see the prequel. I want to see Voldemort's rise to power. I want to see Lily and James and their story arc come to an end. And then let's roll into Harry Potter.
Yeah, and I think there's that perfect bridge there with the scene. They jump back to it a little bit when with Harry's parents getting killed enough that you could tie that scene directly into the Harry Potter arc then. Where that could be like the pinnacle of the seasons up to the Harry Potter arc, where you see all of that develop and you see Harry Potter come as a baby and they rescue him, whatnot. And then it goes into the other series. I think that'd be the perfect brand, like the bridging or the perfect bridge for the series personally.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Nick and I were talking earlier today and I was like, honestly, compared to the Fantastic Beasts movies, I would rather have another set of content of just following another group of kids that lived in Hogwarts during the era of Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Maybe they were a year behind, so their first year was Chamber of Secrets, and just seeing what it was like to be a normal witch or wizard while Harry and his friends were getting down to business. And then you could like have in the background like key movie scenes that are like cleverly edited, Back to the Future too.
Yeah, they're like, holy shit, that dude is petrifying people over here. Like,
what I worry about with that, though, just from like an anticipation standpoint, is would you not always be sitting there being like, well, yeah, but this isn't as exciting as what is like we know is going on in the background.
It would almost have to be like comedic effect.
Yeah,
I was gonna say when I was thinking about it, it would always at heart be more of a lighter toned content until they all die at the battle. That would be the climactic end, they all die.
Yeah.
So to me, if you were going to try take that time period and get somebody else's perspective, and I don't think this works very well, but what idea would be appealing to me would be maybe have it be Dumbledore and Snape's perspective, because there's so much going on behind the scenes that you just don't see. And Dumbledore is withholding information, and he's being strategic, and he's traveling all over the world trying to find Horcruxes. I would take that perspective.
Almost like the perspective from the teachers, like the aspect that they're all seeing, looking from the outside in.
Yeah,
I think the only risk, like you said, it would be interesting. The only risk you run though is Dumbledore and Snape really are on the verge of being unlikable characters. Like you start to realize Dumbledore's been raising Harry to be killed, and Snape, although there's like the always thing, he's still like a pretty bad dude. Like he's always upfront with Harry about how bad a dude he is, but he's still a bad dude. Like, and I feel like if you see a series, you'd have to find ways to like redeem them and be like, oh, maybe they weren't so bad the whole time. Like maybe Dumbledore didn't know until very recently that he was raising Harry for this purpose, and maybe Snape went into Harry's first year being like, I want to be so nice to him, and then he meets him and he's like, I hate you.
He's like, oh, that fucker.
Yeah. I think it'd be good. Because you get Dumbledore as the patron saint, not the Patreon saint. The Patreon saint is Clayton. The patron saint. You get Dumbledore as the patron saint, and then the real fans that are following the books and really paying attention realize, man, Dumbledore is pretty manipulative, and he could have like changed the narrative by just being open and honest with people. I think it's okay to give us a series where we see that internal fight for Dumbledore and give me a very flawed Dumbledore. I think that's fine. And we've seen that anti-heroes, and he's definitely not an anti-hero, but flawed people work in movies. They definitely do. Again, that would not be my go-to. My go-to would be give me the prequel to the series. That's what I really want. I want to see Voldemort's rise to power. I want to see what Lily and James did. Build that out. Give me 3 or 4 seasons at a minimum, and then let's see how it goes.
Yeah, I think that's it. Like I said, it just extends the time period where you're left. It just gives you an extra 4 or 5 years of being like, okay, now we could dive back into the Harry Potter series, and it's just that extra cushion that can't hurt.
And that development of Dumbledore as a flawed character very well could be what we're going to see Fantastic Beasts build up to. Because we've already seen Dumbledore come in, and we've already seen him kind of be manipulative in that movie. So maybe that's where we're headed, is we're going to see Dumbledore who is flawed, but maybe is the flawed person that the universe needs, because he understands that it's the only way to save the greater world.
Mm.
All right, boys, that takes us to the end of the cast. Now's a great time. What are your final thoughts here on the series? Corbin, do you want to kind of kick us off here with final thoughts?
I would say final thoughts are, I don't know if we actually did this, but did everyone say what their house was?
Oh.
I would say you can take all your psychology tests that you want with all of your strange letters combined into some strange acronym you want. But when it boils down to someone's personality being described in one word, having your house sorted on Pottermore tells me loads about you.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Harry Potter for me is just, it's something I'm passionate about. And I passionately get upset when something with so much potential is squandered and ruined. And I just don't think that the Wizarding World is living up to the potential that it has. It is such a unique fantasy world that is on its own. and it's not getting the time of day that it truly deserves.
Final thought would be, no matter what we've said today, whether we've convinced you to watch it or not, do yourself a favor and do it. Like, just watch it. Whether it's TV shows, just immerse yourself in it. One of my favorite stories about Harry Potter ever is one of my first times out of the country, and I'm staying at a hostel, and we debated for like 3 hours at the hostel and into a pub about what the best Harry Potter house was. Like, it's a universal love that it's like you're doing yourself a disservice by not embarking on the journey that is Harry Potter, whether that's the books or the movies. I would highly recommend diving into the books first. But do yourself a favor and really, really jump into it. You're going to love it. It's for all ages. Power through the first maybe book or two. If you are more advanced of a reader, it does mature a little bit. So yeah, just do yourself a favor.
Yeah, I would agree. I think definitely go the book route. I mean, watch the movies too, just like you said, Jesse, like immerse yourself in that universe. And you're going to be, if you haven't done it before, you're going to be wowed by the sheer scope of the universe that J.K. Rowling built for you to immerse yourself in. And you're going to find that it's one of those things that you never want to leave. And if you do enough immersion, you never really will. It's going to stick with you no matter what, because it's such a fantastic world.
And the world is ready for an in-depth Quidditch video game. I'm just going to say it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree with everything you guys said. The only thing that I'll add, I'm going to go ahead and be dad mode for a second. It's a great thing to bond with your kids over. There's a ton of stuff out there, but it seems like kids seem to gravitate towards the same things. And they're things, as a parent, are hard for me to love sometimes. My kids will watch Trolls 27 times in a row. I can't do that. They will watch Sydney to the Max or some of these newer age Disney shows and run them to the ground, and it gets really hard for me to do that. If you were that parent who is just trying to find something that you can bond over, that you're actually going to enjoy and love too, and you have not tried Harry Potter, you are doing yourself a disservice. Go and get the Harry Potter series. Plug it in with your kid. I'd say if your kid's around the age of 4 or 5, you're probably okay for the first Harry Potter. You're certainly not going to harm them by letting them watch the first Harry Potter at that age. So give it a shot. I promise you they're going to love it. I promise you that if you go into it with an open mind, there's a good chance that you're going to like it as well. And it's going to build a lifetime of memories. It's something that you guys can bond over. To me, it's very similar to how Star Wars is for me, where that was one of the first movie series that I really connected with my dad. And my dad was huge into Star Wars. And I remember sitting down and watching those movies with him. Harry Potter can give you a similar story arc to do that with.
And they have the illustrated books that they've been releasing to add that one extra element if you wanted to be reading those to your kids or whatever.
All right. Well, Clayton, you want to take us home?
Sure, I can take us home. You've said all you need to say.
How do you think that I said all I needed to say?
Oh, I do have one more thing to say.
What?
We're not going to accept a Potter file. That term has to die with this cast. It has to die.
Yes.
Boldy got moldy, and so will Potter file.
It's my last time saying Potter file. All right, real quick. Everyone's house before Clayton takes us out. We know what I am already. Tim?
Gryffindor.
Jesse?
Hufflepuff.
Nick?
Hufflepuff.
Losers. All right, Clayton. Your turn.
Who's got the worst Patronus? Real quick, Patronus. You have a husky. I've got a mole.
Fucking.
Wasn't yours a magpie? I actually don't even remember what mine was.
Ravenclaw for me, by the way.
Okay, Ravenclaw. Okay.
That's a
Mine's
great
definitely
house.
off. I think mine was like a white stallion. Not at all. Not correct.
Yes, it was. I remember
Yeah.
because we were laughing about it. We're like, oh man, if only you still had your long hair.
Yeah, so far off.
Let that mane flow.
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
I think that Tim's is worse than Clayton's. I think a mole is far worse than a magpie.
Yeah,
At
least mine can fly around.
Yeah.
Mine just hides in the dirt and is ugly and gives you diseases when it bites.
Are you looking it up right now, Jesse?
I'm trying to. I can't remember where I posted it though.
I remember that we.
Did you post it to the Facebook group a few weeks
I
back?
did.
Oh man,
I'm
Trying
just
to
not.
find that though is gonna be
That's what I was like. I've been scrolling for the last like
400
45
things.
seconds.
our
the
Facebook,
Facebook
community
group has
group
become
is
a meme factory.
yeah. It is
I had attempted because our first month of that group being open, we did a meme king, where we took the four most liked memes and everyone voted on who they thought was the best. And I tried to look at it for this past month, and there's just too much. There's just too much.
Yeah. Yeah, I really think we should do, and if you're listening to the cast and you hear this and you think it'd be a good idea, hit us up and let us know. But I think it'd be cool to do a, like a meme review type video where we go through
Yes,
memes
that'd be a lot
posted
of
in
fun.
our group.
I think that would actually be great.
Like
Throw
us
the meme up on
with
the
us
screen.
three.
And,
Yeah, memes on the screen. We're just scrolling through, reacting to the memes.
Yeah.
I think that'd be pretty funny.
that's good.
That's good.
So keep the lookout for that.
I think it was a dog, Jesse, like a Great Dane or something like
Was
that.
it a husky? Were you the one with
No.
a husky?
No,
Somebody
it
had
was.
a husky.
I wonder if I could just.
I
I don't know. It's not that big of a deal, I guess. Not right now.
I had the husky.
Oh,
Yes.
you're a husky.
Hey,
All right, Jesse, I'm going to go ahead and give you your Patronus. It's a blood-sucking mosquito.
Oh dear God.
That's all you are to me.
Okay.
A parasite, a hindrance. You really do nothing for the world. Bam.
they're a symbiotic nuisance.
Wow. Okay. To be fair, I expected that from Corbin since we're like arch rivals now, but
Yes.
not from you.
Yeah.
Yes, we
You got
established
to be
last
feeling
time Jesse was
we've got the
on.
brotherly love. We've got the connection now, so I'm allowed to.
Okay. I logged in to Pottermore. I'm a mountain hare. I'm a rabbit.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, it's not.
Quick.
Yeah.
Quick.
Cool. Before I take us out, Nick, where can the folks find you if they want to find you, if you want to share that type of thing?
Oh yeah, you want my address? It
Yes.
is.
Your credit card info. Don't forget the expiration date and the numbers on the back.
Social security would be good.
You can find me on Instagram and on Twitter at the Nick Lanham, TheNickLanham, and that's it.
Jesse?
You can find me on Twitch under the handle Master Panda, MasterPanduh.
Good deal. And you can find the regular lads at Nerdosphere Cast, of course. And that does it for this week's Nerdosphere. Remember to follow us over at Twitter at Nerdosphere Cast, as we just mentioned. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/the Nerdosphere. This way you can stay up to date on everything new and noteworthy from the interwebs. Join our Facebook community page to join in on all the meme fun. Just search for the Nerdosphere in the group section. There really is some gold over there. So if you're a fan of nerd-inspired memes, go check that out. Remember, if you like what we do and you want to support us, be sure to leave us a review on iTunes, subscribe to the podcast, and tell your friends and family to check us out. If you really like what we do, check us out over at patreon.com/thenerdosphere, where you can support us and become a part of the show. Don't forget, you can go to thenerdosphere.com/merch to check out our merch, including a nice Tiger King-inspired shirt. I know you're going to like it. Go look at it. I know you're
It's
going to
pretty
like it.
dope.
It's pretty
And
sexy.
it comes in mug and phone case form as well. I don't think we mentioned that earlier. So,
And all the colors on the shirt.
yep, every color.
All kinds of colors.
Tons of colors. All right, guys. That does it. We'll have a great week, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Later.